In the mountains that surround the Navurian Empire, there exists a kingdom that rivals the Empire in wealth and raw power. But what are these creatures? And why do they submit to humans? That's what we'll find out in this episode of Weltengeist. You may have already heard a little about them, the people from the mysterious Moz. They are not human, and yet they seem so familiar. But what are they then? Where do they come from? How, and especially where do they live? The Moz are one among several rulers of the Mosteli, a physically superior species stripped of their consciousness and intelligence. The Moz live with their Mosteli in the eponymous Moz Mountains, which are located to the west and north of the Navurian Empire, and thus provide a natural barrier against the expanding empire. They live in deep, complex cave systems, which they built with their slaves and magic. Only since the discovery by a Navurian scout, no more than 100 or 200 years ago, did the Moz come back in contact with the Navurians and the rest of humankind. Living in their dark caves caused the Moz to lose their eyes. This adaptation is something that doesn't impact their lives on the ground, but it has affected the way they present themselves to the Navurians and humankind above ground. Out of consideration for humankind, the Moz have adopted masks and bandages to cover their empty sockets. It is rare to see an unmasked Moz above ground, but a more frequent event underground. Because of their cave-dwelling lifestyle, the Moz are not sensitive to the cold and often wear lightweight clothing. However, they wear long, thick robes when venturing outside to protect themselves from the burning rays of the sun. The Mosteli, on the other hand, have nothing that could really be called clothing. They are sparsely covered and often uncared for. Their intelligence appears to be on par with most animals, fitting for their role in primarily mindless physical tasks to the satisfaction of the Moz. To unravel the mystery of why the Moz and Mosteli live in these mountains and their origins, we must travel back to the ancient divine war between Avenal and Tanud. Long before humans were cutting down the forests of Raja, fishing the seas and stripping the mountains, there were only the Mosteli, or at least their ancestors. They were large, lizard-like creatures that could grow to 2.5 or even 3 meters tall, protected by thick, leathery scales. They were the indigenous species of Raja, with an advanced culture and civilization, even when compared to the Navurian Empire. These ancient settlements of the Mosteli lie within the current borders of the modern Navurian Empire. But rather than a powerful, flourishing empire, a different fate awaited the Mosteli. When the war began, both Avenal and her brother Tanud courted the favor of the native Mosteli. But the charming, intelligent Tanud knew how to wrap the masses around his finger, and so his army of Mosteli significantly outnumbered that of his sisters. Avenal's battle seemed hopeless from the very beginning. But a world wanderer like her is not just a powerful being. A world wanderer is a general, a warrior, a monster. And so Avenal sacrificed a large part of her power to create a portal to another world, a world that she had already conquered, and from this portal they came in droves. Avenal had opened a portal to summon her armies of other worlds, armies of Eden, Luna, Mars, and Gaia, all a part of the army of mankind. The war picked up speed because the humans were experts in the arts of violence, murder, and destruction. Even with the help of Raja and Tanud, the Mosteli and the divine pair stood no chance against Avenal's army, as the technical sophistication and endless violence of humankind, led by the increasingly powerful World Wanderer, was overpowering. After their victory, Avenal created a god emperor to help humanity conquer Raja in her stead. But that was not enough. The so-called children of Tanud, the Mosteli, were dangerous. They were not only extremely intelligent, but also physically superior to humans and skilled in true kinetics. And so Avenal created a Moz, a species that possessed the combined powers of both worlds and were gifted with a new form of kinetics that allowed them to control the Mosteli. In order for humanity to expand and develop as well as to keep the Mosteli imprisoned, the Moz migrated to the deepest caves of the highest mountains until humanity was ready for unification once more. Such an event occurred only a few centuries ago, which led to the people of Navuria being allowed to use the underground trade routes of the Moz. The Moz serve only one purpose: to control the Mosteli and serve the children of Avenal, humankind. So the Moz began to control the Mosteli with their newfound kinetics, called pathics, and over the course of millennia, the ancient culture of the Mosteli disappeared, and they became nothing more than an obedient slave species, without identity and without consciousness. Most Mosteli are like that: stupid, obedient, and animalistic. But it is said that in the depth of the jungles live so-called wild Mosteli. Normally, Mosteli are capable of nothing more than performing mindless tasks, but these wild Mosteli are said to control their own fire. Few know the extent of Navuria's jungles, and even fewer know that they could be deep and dense enough to serve as a new home for some Mosteli. Mosteli who are still conscious and intelligent. Intelligent enough to build their own settlements, and perhaps even intelligent enough to bring their ancient god, Tanud, back to life. But that is another story for another video. When the last king of the Moz decided it was time to reveal themselves to the people, they felt the punishment of Avenal. When they left their tunnels, their skin burned under the merciless sun, the face of Avenal, their creator. And so it was all more significant when they saw how humans marched through the sun without any problems and could even make creams that protected them. Yes, it was clear. These are the children of Avenal. These are the chosen ones. To fulfill their mission, the Moz submitted to the Navurian Empire, the first humans they encountered. All Moz live in the tunnels and caves of the Moz Mountains, which can be described as the Kingdom of Moz. This kingdom is ruled by the Mozenal, the Almighty King, an entity that lives for several hundreds of years and is extremely powerful. The normal Moz are similar to a swarm consciousness. As members of a collective, they do not voice their own cravings for individuality and live for the greater good of the kingdom. Thus, the loyalty and self-sacrifice of the Moz army knows no bounds and is respected and feared by all in the tunnels. The selection process to become king is made simple by this collective attitude. Should a king feel ready for eternal sleep, the 9 most gifted Moz youngsters in the kingdom are chosen. These 9 will be trained in the art of kinetics for 9 years to compete against each other at the end. Over the course of 9 days, the younglings engage in a kinetic battle, something that does not take place in the physical sphere of existence, but in the so-called kinetic sphere. The winner of this battle absorbs the powerful Weltengeist energy of his fallen companions and that of the old king, thus ascending to the role of Mozenal for centuries to come. While there is no coronation ceremony, a special meal composed of mushrooms and herbs is prepared to celebrate. The mushrooms found in this meal are a staple in Moz cuisine and are grown in the underground lakes and rivers, and this is where the Navurian translation of shadow lake mushrooms comes from. Fortunately, these mushrooms create a biome that supports many small animals. A variety of bugs, snails, and lizards not only find a home among the mushrooms, but a place on the plate too. This unconventional menu is something you have to get used to as a spoiled Navuri crossing the trade routes. Besides a sophisticated ventilation system that the Moz have developed, we must not forget lighting of the caves. Obviously, torches and fire are rather unsuitable, so the Moz resorts to a native insect called morning bee, an insect that glows for a few minutes in contact with the shadow lake mushrooms, a combination that has led to the construction of special lamps. I could talk for days about the culture of the Moz, the army, the different clothing styles, social classes, or even the Mosteli, but this was a short insight into the mysterious way of life of one of the most important cultures of my world. If you liked this video, then I'd be happy if you left a comment and subscribed. Until the next time, Weltengeist.